Hello, welcome back. My name is Alex Palmer and this is the second video in a series of 4 in which I perform and explain Guitar Teacher's Heaven. This is the beginning of section 2, the picking and scales section. Now, as much as I love playing songs and jingles, every player reaches a point in their development where they have to learn some theory and figure out just what it is that they're actually playing. Unfortunately, most students will shy away from learning guitar theory, but that doesn't have to be the case if you have the right materials. So let's see what I have to offer you today. Before we get started, I want to mention again that I'm tuned down half a step. So if you want to play along with this video, you should tune down right now. So let's get going. This is alternate picking in 3/4. Excellent. So this is a great way to introduce playing scales to your student because it's not just laying down a scale and saying, here, learn this, memorize this. Come back when you've got it memorized, right? This adds sort of a melodic flair and it sounds quite lovely. And there are a few really nice things about this because we are in one position all the time. Even though we're covering a lot of harmonic ground here, we're shifting chords twice every bar, which is, a lot. Our hand isn't actually moving at all. We're in one position all the time. We're always in 7th position. To put this plainly, if you look at the numbers here, you never see a number lower than 7. So our index finger is always at 7, so we'll call that we're in 7th position. So there's no awkward stretches. This is a very comfortable run, and it feels wonderful. So this will be great for your beginner and advanced students. And one more thing to mention here, we are in 3/4, but I've notated this in 6/8 because I just thought it would look clearer if I put all the notes of the C chord together, all the notes of this chord together. So it looks like it's in 6/8, but I don't like how it feels in 6/8. It feels very stiff when we play this in 6/8. So I've put it in 3/4 because I love how it kind of floats and bops along, and you'll see what I mean when you play along with the guitar profile. And final thing to mention is this is alternate picking, so there will be a bit of a challenge for your brain to continue going down, up, down, up, down, up, depending on what string you're on and what interval you're playing. So let's move on to this file, and this is the same thing except now we've flipped the sequence on each chord that we were playing. So last time we were going root, third, root, root, third, root, root, third, root, etc. But now we're going third, root, third, third, root, third, third, root, third, and so on until we get to this little turnaround. And here I have included the fingering, so there shouldn't be any questions there. Let's take a listen to this. Excellent. So just a variation on the first file. And let's move on. Now instead of just going root, third, or third, root, third, we're going to complete the triad. So C major triads now. So what we're doing is going root, third, fifth, root, third, fifth, root, third, fifth on every chord. So another difference here is we don't have that little turnaround here. I've decided to take this all the way down, D minor and C, and then we come all the way back up. So let's take a listen to this, and we're going to love it. Beautiful. So this will be a big challenge for your hand. You look at some of the fingering here. In order to remain in one position, the fingering will be challenging at first, but once you get it, it will feel fantastic. And again, the picking, maintaining your alternate picking will be a struggle here, and that's where the benefit will really come through once you get this under your fingers. So if you like this sort of triadic paradigm, if you like these first 3 lessons we've done, I'm happy to tell you that I wrote a book on triads. It's all in the key of C, and it shows you how to use triads to build chords, because triads are sort of the basic building blocks of all music. If you're ever playing a chord, you're actually playing a triad or something based off the idea of a triad. So I'm going to make that available. Maybe I'll put the link up or something. It's called 20-Day Triads, and I'm happy to show it to you if you're interested. But let's move on here today. Okay, this document is a can of worms. This is 3-note per string pattern reference, an introduction to the modal positions in C major. Now, I don't have time. I want to respect your time and not make this, an hour-long video. So I'm not going to talk too much about the functions of modes and playing in modes, but I am going to break this down and perform each of these and tell you how this sort of idea allows you to break the neck up and organize it into 3 notes on every string. So I'm going to show you what to do with these to practice your picking and sequencing, but I think I should start just by playing through them. So here we go. We're in the key of C major, and we're going to play the notes of C major, but we're starting on the 3, the 3rd note of the scale, so we're going to call this E Phrygian. This is the E Phrygian position. 4 F Lydian, 5 G Mixolydian, 6 A Aeolian. We know this as our natural minor scale. Moving on to the 7 B Locrian. Now 1 C Ionian. We know this as our natural major scale. Now 2 D Dorian. And finally 3 E Phrygian. Okay, so before I say too much about that, let's move on to the next document. This is the same thing, identical, but now we're in the key of E major. So this is an introduction to the modal positions in E. So before we were in C, and now we're looking at them in E. So if you were to hold these documents up side by side, you'll take some time to notice how they're different and how they are the same. You'll find that the Ionian intervals, this is the same sort of pattern as was C Ionian on the last document. And so you'll start to notice, I hope, what the positions are, and maybe you can memorize, for instance, the Dorian 3-note per string pattern all the way up. How does the Phrygian look? And it doesn't matter if you're on G sharp or wherever, you want to sort of memorize not necessarily the frets specifically, but the patterns and the relationship between the notes in every position. So I'm going to shoot through and perform each of these a little faster to save time, and then I'll tell you how I want to use these to practice our picking. Okay, so what a nice way to organize the fretboard into these 3-note per string cells. This is the sort of thing that you should not just run through and say, okay, Alex, I did it, whatever. This is the sort of thing that you should memorize, and you could spend years on this because it will really repay a close inspection. I promise you that. Now here is what I would do to practice these things. We'll start here, just for an example, the 5B Mixolydian position. And imagine we were to run some sequences in this position. So I'll just come up with one now. Imagine we played the root note, skipped a note and played it, came back, skipped a note, back, skip a note, back, skip a note, and so on. I'll perform that for you right now. And then imagine we're on this note. Imagine we shifted up to this position and then played it in reverse. Okay, I'll come up with another one right now. Imagine we just played 4 notes in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go to the second note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll run that all the way up. Okay, so these are the sort of things that you could spend an eternity working on, coming up with new patterns and sequences to apply to these positions. So that is what I would recommend doing. There's an endless amount of things that you could do here. So have some fun with that and really focus on memorizing and just really focusing on your picking and making sure that everything speaks how well you want it to. I do want to make one note, because the idea of performing modal progressions, it's huge. It's a huge concept that I don't have time to explain today. But I do want to make one point, that just because you're playing in this position or in this position or whatever 3-note per string position you're in, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're expressing a B mixolydian harmonic progression just because you're in this position. Okay, this is sort of more of a visual aid and a way to break up the fretboard. So it just because you're in a modal position, it doesn't mean that you're playing a modal progression necessarily. Okay, and I'm going to show you an example of that on this, because here we are. This is 3-note per string, alternate picking Baroque feel. Baroque is a style of music, well, it's a time in music history, and I was playing this and it just had a very Baroque feel, and I liked how it felt, so I decided to make a speed study out of this to see how fast you could go. So in this case, we're expressing what I would call an E Ionian progression, because we start on an E chord and then we sort of go away, we travel a little bit, and then we end up back in this E position. So I'm going to go back here. You see, we're actually using this B mixolydian 3-note per string pattern position, but here we're using that position, but we're expressing a different mode here when we perform this. So I'm going to perform this, and then I'll have some more to say about it. I'll try going faster. Okay, so you could repeat this. I put 99 times. I thought that was kind of funny. But in Guitar Pro, there is a nice feature. I don't use it often, but you could highlight this entire thing, and it's called Speed Trainer, where you can set it to increase a couple points on the metronome marking every time it repeats. So if you really want to get this cooking, you could use the Guitar Pro Speed Trainer. And also, this is an alternate picking exercise. You see down, down, up, down, down, up, da, 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 da. So down, down, up, down, da, 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 right? So it's an alternate picking feel. But if you wanted to really get this cooking, get this closer to like 200 beats per minute, you could hammer on and pull off as much as you want. And this will sound really ridiculous, but it would sound cool with distortion or something. But I'll show you what I mean. You could hammer on and pull off like as much as possible. So listen to this. So I started slow, but you could really get that cooking, and it's sort of a nice exercise in its own right, seeing if you can hammer on and pull off all these like huge runs. So have some fun with that, and let's move on here. So this is sort of a one-off. I was having fun one night, and I thought, I wonder what would happen if we try to do a 4-note per string pattern. So this isn't something that you'd want to memorize and put as much focus on the 3-note per string pattern scales. That's something that will take years to figure out. But this is just something that's fun, just sort of a one-off that you can have fun with, and you don't have to take this too seriously. So I'll perform this. This is 4 notes per string, and we're playing a G major scale. And on a nice fat G chord if you want. And I put easier and harder, but this isn't necessarily easier. This isn't any harder. It's just that we've added another octave here. So I guess it's harder from the standpoint that there's more to memorize in this shape. So I'll perform this, and let's see if I can get through. Beautiful. So don't take that too seriously, but it is sort of a nice little puzzle. It's a good little memory test to see if you can get through. And you see here, of course, the fingering is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, because we're doing 4 notes per string, and you only have 4 fingers, right? So anyway, that's just a fun little exercise. Have some fun with that, and don't take it too seriously. Okay, now this you should take seriously. C major sweeping. Every student I've ever had comes to me saying, I want to learn sweep picking, and it's just a really neat effect. It's very harp-like, and it sounds just beautiful, and it can sound very stunning and shocking when you get it going very fast. So here I'll perform this, and then I'll tell you what's going on. Faster. Cool. So the progression that we're doing here is 1, 5, 4, 5, 4, 1, 4, 5. So you'll notice we're not playing any minor chords. So it sounds very, to put it generically, it sounds very happy and optimistic. So that's a good way to set a mood to play only major chords. So what we're doing to have this long-running riff but not doing any minor chords is we've started inverting a few of these chords to have different notes in the bass. So I'll explain to you what that means. But first I want to mention this PM. I haven't put this on any of the other lessons thus far because this stands for palm muting. And I'm palm muting all the time. It's a technique where basically you're resting your right hand over the strings by the bridge. So you're basically dampening the strings all the time because it allows you to keep control over the strings that you want to sound, and it allows them to speak, and it allows you to dampen the strings that you don't want to sound. So because this is only 1 note per string, basically, you don't want these to overlap really. It should happen very fast, but if these were all ringing out and sustained, it would sound very hectic and a little too crazy to really understand what's going on. So another thing to mention is I didn't put the picking direction, but this would be up, 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 down, 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 up, 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 down, 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 down. So this is the complete opposite really of alternate picking. Well, in a way, it's sort of a wide-reaching alternate pick where you're going up, down, up, down. So it's sort of more like strumming, but not exactly. It's more precise. So you're doing this by resting your hand on the strings at the bridge. And this is a really nice feeling. I don't know. Guitar feels really nice on my hands, and I think that's why I like it so much, because I associate it with actually a very pleasant feeling. So by resting your hand by the strings of the bridge, or on the strings by the bridge, it's just a really nice feeling on a part of your hand that doesn't really get touched very often. So it's quite a lovely thing, and that's why I think I like sweeping so much, because not only does it sound really cool and shocking, but it feels really nice in your hand. Okay, so now I don't want to go on forever with this, but I will explain what this means. So here we're playing a C major chord, and this RP means that we're in root position. And all that means is that the lowest note we're playing here is a C. So it's a C chord, and we're playing the root, which is a C. So it's all built basically on a C. So we call it root position. Now here we're playing 5 G major. We call this first inversion because we don't have a G in the bass. We actually have a B as the lowest note in the bass. So because B is the third note of a G major triad, we call this a first inversion. Okay? So G major, B in the bass, first inversion. Now this chord is the same idea as this one, except it's a 4 F major, but we call it first inversion because, again, we have an A in the bass here. So it's the third note of an F major scale, or F major mode. And so we're going to call this first inversion. Now again here, this is a root position chord, so this is the exact same chord as is the first bar. Okay, like it's not the same chord, but it's the same formula, it's the same, it's root position. And again here, as we move on, it's another root position, so this is the same shape. And then again here, C major first inversion. So we have an E in the bass, we have the third note of a C major in the bass, so we call it a C major first inversion. And then here, no surprises, we've already seen this, a root position F major, and again a root position G major. So that's really cool, and I'm going to move on to the next document, which again is the same, but I've called this money notes. I thought that was a cute little addition right there. And the only change that's happening here from the last document is I'm adding some money notes on the end of every bar. Okay, so the last note of every bar has been altered in this case. So I'll perform this and then I'll explain just what's going on. I'll get it going. That sounds cool. So I do want to, there's not much to talk about technique here because it's basically the same as we just discussed in terms of sweeping, but I do want to talk about the nomenclature. There is a little change here. So this remains a C major root position because we've changed the last note, but we've changed it to a fifth from the C major triad. So we don't have to call this anything different. This is a G and it's part of the C major chord, so we still call this the same thing. Same here. We've changed this note. Before it was a 10, but because we've added a 15, again it's a G, and that's the root note of G major, so we still just call this G major in first inversion. Okay, now here is a major change, F major 7. So you see we've put a 12 at the end, and if this were a 13, we would call it 4 F major because we'd have an F up there, but it's not an F, it's one shy of that, it's an E. So we call this an F major 7, and it's still first inversion because it's built, our lowest note is the third of an F major, it's an A in the bass. So we don't really care what's going on above. For these brackets, all we care is what's the lowest note that we're hitting. And this is what the bass player would be playing, right? Like if the bass player were playing this, he'd be playing this note, then that note, he'd be sitting on that, right? So that's what the bass would, he'd be playing it at the start of the bar, but that's what the bass player would be holding. So that's what we're actually building this chord on is the third. So we call it first inversion. Now this is the same because we're adding a fifth here. Same here, we don't have to change the name because the money note we've added is just a fifth. But here again, we've added a major 7. So this would be called a C major if this were an 8 here, but it's not. It's a 7. It's the major 7 interval added on to this C major chord. So we call it a C major 7 first inversion. And it's still first inversion because we have the third in the bass. And then again here, this is the same. We've added the 5th, and again we've added the 5th. So I hope that's clear. And have a lot of fun with that, because that's that's the sort of thing you could play at a party and people just go like, what did I just hear? Like, what's going on? I got to learn that, right? And it will be very frustrating at first. It takes quite a while, a long time of really doing this slowly to get sweeping under your belt. So use some patience, exercise patience, and you'll get there. So have some fun with that. And remember, the most important thing is palm mute. Palm mute as much as you can. Okay. On to this document, and this is the last thing we're going to do today because I don't want this video to go on forever. So I am going to explain this as quickly as I can, and then I will perform it for you. So this is a 3-page document, and it's called Metronomic Subdivision. So this isn't a real word, but I thought it looked cool, and it says what I needed to say. So metronome is in there somewhere, and subdivision. So we're basically dividing a metronome marking, okay? And I'm calling this guitar meditation because this instrument is a solitary instrument. I do my best playing actually alone, like completely alone, sometimes late at night, sometimes early in the morning. But this instrument really lends itself to meditation. Just as an aside, the only 2 things in my life that really elevate me spiritually are playing guitar and exercising. You know, if you're doing sort of a low impact repetitive exercise, you get in this headspace and you get the chills and you just feel really nice. I've never had that doing anything else than when I'm playing guitar or exercising. So this is something that I do want you to repeat over and over and over and really meditate on. It will take you to a new level spiritually, okay, if you approach this correctly. So alternate picking chromatic scales. Chroma. I don't usually teach chromatic scales because I just don't think they sound very good, but it'll be nice for our purposes today because we're really, this is more of a rhythmic exercise and working with accents, etc. So the word chroma has something to do with color. So whenever I think of chromatic scale, I think of, you know, the wheel of color where they all sort of blend into each other. And so if you look at the scale we're doing here, they're all one note above each other. It's nothing but semitones. So it's all tension. There's no sort of give and take and push, pull, and release. It's just nothing but a gradual climb up and then a gradual climb down. So before I set the metronome, I'm going to perform this. And here the fingering is all there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll play this much faster than 60 beats per minute just to see how it's going to sound. Okay, great start. So what we're going to do is do 2s. We're going to group that into 2s, and then we're going to group it into 3s, and moving on, we'll group it into 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, and then finally 8s. And that's the last thing that we'll do today. So keep in mind, these are picking, so you want to always go go down, up, down, up, down, up. No matter what we're doing, even if it's 3s, this would be down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, okay? And you see these little hat-looking things. These are very intense accents, okay? The lesser accents are sort of shaped like a horn, like they're on their side. But these are very intense accents because what they're doing is they're showing you what note to hit when the metronome strikes, okay? So basically the first of every group of whatever it is you're playing will require a heavy accent. See, if we look at the 4s, the first has a heavy accent, okay? Groups of 5, heavy accent on the first note of the group of 5, heavy accent. Okay, so that just sort of gives you an overview of what we're doing. So I'm going to set the metronome fairly low. I'm going to set it to 50 beats per minute because I was rehearsing this, and when we get up to the 7s and 8s, it gets extremely fast. So I'll set this to 50 beats per minute, and I'm going to play what we see here. Basically playing this chromatic scale, but slipping 2 notes into the duration of every beat. You hear me really putting an accent when the metronome strikes. Okay? Now I only played that once, but I would want you to repeat that many times and just meditate on it. Okay, so now we're going to slip 3 notes of the scale onto each beat. So let's see how this sounds. And I will shoot ahead just to see where we're going. Okay, you could repeat that over and over and over, trying different speeds. Now we're going to do 4s, so we're slipping 4s onto each metronome beat. And I'm going to start playing these twice, because they're going to get a lot faster. Okay, now to look at 5s, and I've had to change the sequence a little bit. It's a little shorter. This will feel really weird, but strap in. Okay, so repeat that over and over and until it feels natural. Grouping things in 5s isn't something we naturally do. So that's where the benefit will come from meditating on this and playing it over and over and over. So now let's squeeze 6 notes into each metronome marking. It's getting pretty intense, so let's get to the 7s, and this is going to be really strange. Cool. Now we'll do 8s, and this is just going to be face-meltingly fast. Okay, so I got through that unscathed. I think that was a decent demonstration of what I'm asking you to do here. So this isn't meant to be played all through, start to finish. You could if you want, but I do recommend say, okay, tonight I'm going to or for the next 10 minutes, I'm just going to play the 7s, or I'm just going to play the 4s, or just the 5s. And the point of this really is to you can look at your hands, but it's the sort of thing that you really want to shut off your mind and just get into a different headspace and just feel it, okay? It's all about feel, and this is the sort of grunt work that if you do in your private study, it will improve your overall musicianship tremendously, because rhythm is so important, and you never know when you're going to be asked to play in a strange time signature or to group something in a strange way. So if you do this sort of activity, you will be prepared for whatever comes your way. So I'm going to cut this video off before it goes on forever. Thank you very much for spending some time with me. I've had another great day speaking with you, and I hope you'll be back for part 3 of this video series. We're going to look at the second half of the Picking and Scales section from Guitar Teacher's Heaven. So thank you very much for being with me. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you tomorrow.